I do some.
Good morning, everyone. We'll start the meeting at 10:00 hours. This is the Planning Strategy Committee meeting for February 2025. Welcome everyone here. Apologies, we didn't have any formal apologies. We have an apology for lateness from Councillor Smith, who's held up in traffic. Councillor Barry Bruce is online. We also have Mary Davenport online. The recording, the processes are being recorded now while we're in public meeting. So just have someone move to accept the apology from Quentin for lateness. Moved by.
I'll accept it. No, okay. Not accept it.
You've seconded it. Okay, Gavin's moved it. Liz has seconded. All in favour? Right. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda. Once again, due to some traffic issues out there, with your approval, would like to change the order of the agenda. So we'll start with item 2, go to number 3, and then back to number 1. We've got one of the staff members involved in item 1 is still making her way here. So
until we need to add item 7.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Oh, and the late agenda item that was added to the agenda. Thanks, Gavin. We'll add that as item 7. That's a public excluded item. Okay. Are you happy to move that? Yes. Moved by Gavin, seconded by Matt. All in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, we got ahead of ourselves here. We've done the agenda because I wanted to get that agenda sorted out so people understood the order of the thing. Now we'll come back to public forum. We have 2 speakers requested to speak in public forum. Mr. James Hall and Mr. Robert Yang. So we'll start with Mr. Hall. James Hall, you come forward, please. This is public forum. Allowed a few minutes talking on the subject we're talking on is the Fast Track Act process. And yeah, sorry, I'm way out of order. I'll come back to the explaining why the confirmation agenda in a minute. Okay, right. We'll get on with public forum. Thanks, James.
Thanks,
We've got a few minutes just to talk about your contribution to the process that we'll be addressing in a workshop later on today.
Yes, I understand about the process. Thanks, Lyle, and good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am James Hall. I do represent the Mulligans Valley Protection Society, otherwise known as MVPS. MVPS has a direct interest in the fast track approvals process and the Council's development of its second generation spatial plan 2.0. MVPS has upwards of 350 resident members now, with membership growing weekly. Its particular concern surrounds the proposed Coronet Village urban township development in the Mulligans Valley, which encompasses a gondola, 2 schools, and 780 residences on the land zone, rural amenity with no capacity to absorb urban development, and in part ONL. I'm sure you're aware of it. We implore the Council to ensure that this planning and strategy generation 2.0 spatial plan does not get led by developer-driven fast-track proposals. We find it highly unusual that the Council would take the step of including these developments within the spatial plan consultation in the first place, giving them more ability to lobby the Council for inclusion. The imperative question that needs to be answered first here is there a need for this much additional housing in the district? We have been advised that the Council has yet to release its housing and business development study that will hopefully answer this question. The Council is also yet to advance its urban intensification variation to the district plan to a hearing. This should be a priority. Our view is that an answer to this question is needed before any spatial planning exercises are advanced and certainly before any fast track applications are considered. Coronet Village has its issues. None of the consortium group are aligned with what they want, and 3 of the 6 in the consortium group have publicly stated they do not support the village. We will be supporting adjacent neighbours with submissions to the expert panel when the time comes. We are already completing expert peer reviews of the initial application, which we consider seriously flawed and misleading, including that it stated that there was no concern from surrounding neighbours. Totally incorrect. The QLDC has the ability to provide full feedback on the applications and the expectation to nominate a member to represent on the panel. So on the basis that it supports its community-driven district plan, including nominating a representative to the panel needs to be fully cognizant of the council planning framework and has the ability to properly evaluate the cumulative effects, I'll say it again, the cumulative effects of the 7 housing fast-track proposals in Queenstown, providing a total of around 7,000 new homes. And if you want a reference to where that is in the Act, it's in Schedule 5, Section 5(1)G and 17(1)B. You have the rights. It is not good enough for the QLDC to sit back and not be actively involved in the process. As a key stakeholder, this is not what the Act or the community expects. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from committee members? Okay, thanks very much, James.
Thank you.
Yang. We're keen to hear from you about your comments and suggestions on the process.
On the process.
And we've got a few minutes to do that, and we'll take any key points into consideration in our workshop later on.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am a resident of Gippsland and a supporter of an informal group known as the Friends of Gippsland Character Zone. Thank you for letting me know the agenda items for today's planning and strategy meeting. There's a lot of concern, especially from a small rural area like Gippsland, where the fast-track mechanism goes against the well-established and sensible controls which are in place, ensuring the landscape and the infrastructure do not suffer or is compromised. And when the fast-track process compounds the problem by the lack of transparency and the reluctance or refusal to engage the community. What should Gippsland and QLDC do together while waiting for the expert panel to review and cast a decision on any application in which involves this area? I hope in today's session, the following questions and views will be discussed. Under the agenda item of today's meeting, elected members' commentary focus on potential allowing for advocacy for communities' views. QLDC and Gippsland should talk. How do we, QLDC and the Gippsland community, proceed from here? Will the community know when the expert panel is formed? Will the community know the details of the application if it has been modified after consultation? While QLDC, as mentioned in today's agenda, will not be assessing the actual or potential effects of proposed development on the environment and people, may I also add on the infrastructure, which is road, sewage, power. There are 2 key agreements between QLDC and the community, Gippsland community. They are the Gippsland Character Zone, Section 23 of the District Plan, and the Memorandum of Understanding on the Coverall Gippsland Dark Sky Park, concluded on 22nd March 24, incorporated as a component of QLDC's vision beyond 2050. These 2 crucial building blocks are not just to protect and preserve what we have, but have significant economic benefits to Queenstown and the nation. This must be made known to the panel. I'm heartened to note that there's an agenda item removing conditions of consent. Under the FTAA, I could not find the validity of a fast-track approval. It should be time-bound, without an extension under any circumstances. After all, it should be fast-tracked, should it not? Especially for housing developments. What happens if the applicant overpromised and underdelivered? Promises and deadlines must be kept. Strict enforcement on promises and committed deadlines made by the applicant is one of the key factors for a fast-track proposal to produce its intended results. How to enforce and ensure the key deliverables of a fast-track application will happen. If it is a housing development proposal, it becomes a lock and leave investment, be it from an overseas buyer or a local buyer, and a high percentage of the units are sold as such. Where is the immediate lasting economic benefit to the nation and the solution to the affordable housing situation? Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from committee members? I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And the good,
I will leave
good
this
questions
here.
we'll take to the workshop, so,
Yeah.
okay?
I'll leave this here just in case you need.
Yeah, that would be really good. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Heading into public forum. Now, I've got ahead of myself before. We've moved the confirmation agenda. I'll just explain it here. I've got a reason for it. That we did move it with the addition of the public exclude item number 7 on the Arthur's Point rezoning appeal, Gertrude's Salary Limited. The reason for this, Planning and Development General Manager has requested that a publicly excluded item on this appeal be added to the agenda. So we've done that, okay? Right, thank you. Right, going to item number 2.
Minutes.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting way ahead of myself.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Rusty. So, really declarations of conflict of interest?
No.
Right, Barry? No declaration.
No, for me.
No matters lying on the table. Confirm the agenda. Confirmation of public minutes of the meeting. The public minutes of the 3rd December 2024 Planning and Strategy meeting be confirmed as a true and correct record.
I have one thing to raise there. Item 1, I had a second part of the resolution. First one was note the contents of the report. The second one I had on there was to note the updates on timing and progress. Or that, those.
On the proposed district plan updates.
Yes. Before we pass both.
So what was your second?
So the resolution was in 2 parts. We've only got one.
Yeah, note the contents of the report. What was it?
The second part was to note the timing, note the updates on timing and progress. So I can read it out if you. Item 1 on the 3rd of December said, yeah, recommendation note, 1 note contents of report, 2 note the updates on timing and progress on projects undertaken by the planning policy.
We can add that in if you're happy. You got any other, you happy with that, mate?
I was an apology at the last meeting.
Oh, you're apology.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Huh?
I'm happy to add.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to add that. There's no real issue. You got it written down? Okay, we'll add that in. Thanks, Gavin. Any other comments before we move minutes?
No.
So with that amendment, the public minutes of the 3rd of December 2024 Planning and Strategy meeting as amended be confirmed as a true and correct record. Moved by Gavin, seconded by Melissa. All in favour? Carry. Now we'll go to item 2. Update on Generation 2.0 of Queenstown Links Spatial Plan and Future Development Strategy. Welcome, Dean.
If you can please take my report as read, but just note that in section 9, where I set out 7 stages and timeframes, stages 2 to 4 have been slightly pushed out by 2 to 3 weeks, as we've only just received the infrastructure information that we require for the housing and business capacity assessment. So that's just modified that programme slightly, but then it does catch up over 5, 6 to 7, so that remains the same.
So that was in paragraph 7 you're talking about,
Paragraph, number 9.
on number 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes.
so on you say it's impacted by the housing, the HBA basically. Is that-
Yes.
Have we got an update, another latest update on how we're going on that?
Yes, we're getting really close, and the infrastructure information that has been required to complete that work is now with us. We do have a workshop this afternoon to discuss those results and to understand what it means, and then that will be fed into the HBA model and then subsequently the report. So things will start moving much quicker than they have today, basically.
Okay, so we're still on track for what says the interim results will be available in March 2025.
Yes, yeah, that's still correct.
It's getting quite critical now because it's impacting on quite a lot of other things down the line.
Yeah.
Including what we heard in public forum. Okay. Okay, right. And nothing else you want to update on, man?
Everything else is, yes, it's the same, but happy to answer any questions regarding any of those paragraphs.
So I've got a quick question.
Gavin?
So paragraph 15 mentions the national direction overhaul. It's got national with a capital N. I'm just wanting to check that's nothing to do with the National Party. And can you just explain what the general gist of the national direction overhaul covers?
Yes, so it's split into a number of changes around the legislative and our planning environment. And I can't remember how many pieces we currently have, but that we operate under national policy statements. For example, the FDS and the HBA is done under the National Policy Statement of Urban Development. And we also have to follow all of the pieces of MPSs in terms of how we progress through that work. What National is looking at doing is really overhauling all of these systems.
So it is referring to the current government's direction.
Yeah.
And their review of the national policy statements.
Yes, so that will have some impacts on the work that we do because they're revising the existing pieces and also introducing some new ones. So we should start to see things coming up from around March to give us sort of idea of what we think those changes will look like. But it's unlikely they will be operative until at least July, August. But so we don't know the content yet. We've got some ideas, but we just have to sort of keep our eye open and then work to those changes as they come through.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
We understand there's about 24 new, 24 PEC funds being released. So some are new and some are updates.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Just on the same area, a lot of the spatial plan Gen 2.0, how does it obviously interacts a bit with what we're doing with the regional deal?
Yes. So essentially what the regional deal is, it's really a tool of how we can actually potentially implement our spatial plan. So all the things that we've put in our spatial plan, the regional deal potentially is a vehicle for us to actually implement it. And so we'll be using that information to update back into generation 2 of the spatial plan.
Oh, excellent, okay. That paragraph 17, can you just explain a little bit more to me about the anticipated changes related to the removal of LUC3 from the highly productive land MPS? You got detail on that?
We don't really have many details as yet, but it's one of the changes that we're anticipating through the national direction changes that they may remove land use classification 3.
So that means there'll be more land unaffected by highly productive type constraints.
Yeah, yes, correct.
So through the chair, at this point, we've been directed not to take them into consideration, so.
Yeah, okay, right, understood. Okay, any other questions? Okay. Barry, do you have any?
No, I appreciate it's a moving target and time will make the picture a bit clearer.
Right. Got the resolution, note the contents of the report. I'll move that in a second. Kevin, any further discussion? All in favour? Right. Thank you very much, Dean. Go to item 3. Housing. Great. Housing Action Plan. G'day, Emily.
So 2 main updates from me today. The first one is about the short-term letting work program. So as you would have seen last year with the Infometrics report that came out, we commissioned a peer review to test that further, which essentially confirmed that the analysis was limited in its scope but robust, and so the conclusions of that were about the rental price for rental houses. Short-term letting doesn't have a particularly large impact on the rental prices. So we really wanted to test into that further. So firstly, after that peer review, that was the response, and then we're now following up with another study, and the request for proposals has gone out now on PETs, and so we're in the process of the procurement for that. And that study is going to really test into the hypothesis there about the way those market dynamics work, and about how some properties perhaps don't have got, you know, properties that are being used for short-term letting. Perhaps those aren't the properties that are necessarily going to be used for long-term letting. For example, holiday homes. People have always had holiday homes that have sat empty. If those homes are being used for short-term letting, it's not going to necessarily impact the availability of long-term rentals. So quite a complex sort of dynamic. We really want to dig into this more to really understand exactly what's happening. So that's the big piece of work that's coming up about that, and happy to answer any questions on that one.
Oh, yeah, there are. I've got a couple of questions. Melissa first.
So the new study will look at availability and price, or focus on availability?
So we've kept the scope open, quite open for the respondents to come back to us to suggest how they think best to answer that question at the moment, because we did ask during the peer review about that question.
Yeah.
Essentially, the answer was that it's very difficult to distinguish, you know, availability versus prices. That they should be correlated anyway. Obviously, if there's something's really limited in availability, the price goes up. And so therefore the market economics concluded that it was most appropriate to focus on those prices, because we have got data about prices and we don't have data about availability. And so I tested that a little bit about asking about things like, you know, trade listings, or, you know, that sort of thing. And essentially it was just too tricky, because people double up in the way that they advertise, and, you know, there's a lot of informal platforms and that sort of thing. So there just isn't really robust enough data to look at availability separate from price.
Yeah. Thank you.
Matt?
Thank you. So Airbnb's been a big advocate of pushing a central government policy change for the whole country to be able to monitor and get data. Is there any more progress on that, or are we still where we were 6 months ago with that?
As far as I know, we're still where we are with 6 months. I'm not sure if there's any other updates.
No, we keep advocating for that change. Because it would be really helpful to know the numbers and where they are and those types of things.
Do you see any movement ahead of elections maybe, or?
We've been advised that it's not a priority. Yeah.
For you, Mr. Chair, I think it's worth noting the in the regional deal process, there is a request in there around improvements to tourism and accommodation related data. And that could be the way to that story.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just quick one, that existing study that went back to when, about 2017, was that right? Yeah.
Approximately, yeah.
Is there any intention or idea to go a bit further back from that and see how things have changed over the decade, I guess, and I guess a lot of this week's coming from the anecdotal evidence of people that live here, that there are loads of houses that families or people used to live in, that are now no longer available for long-term rentals. So this seems to be counter to what's been, proposed or found by this report. And certainly in the area that we live in, there's a number of houses that were permanent residences that are now no longer, and they are short-term visitor accommodation. But that change may have happened before 2017. So yeah, it's whether or not that will be assessed in some way.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. So similarly, we again have kept the scope broad enough to say, to see what the respondents suggest is the best way to approach. So we haven't been specific about our requirements in that regard, but we're absolutely open to that, and that will be part of our discussions with them to really test into these dynamics and how they might have changed over time. Because one of the hypotheses in the peer review was about how essentially there's always been a lot of empty homes, and that's been the bigger driver, if you like, of the shortage for long-term available, long-term rental availability, and the fact that we've got so many empty homes. And so, although anecdotally you've got lots of stories about permanent homes turning into the short-term residences, that the hypothesis is that just hasn't had nearly as big an impact as the empty homes issue. So it's certainly something that we'll test with them through that procurement process.
And the other thing, sorry, there's one more. I'm not sure, I can't remember whether it's covered in that existing study, but the recent changes with tenancy legislation with short-term rentals or periodic tenancies, and it's changed back again with this current government. But there was a view that when it changed with the previous government, that was people were more inclined to have their property available for short-term visitor accommodation because it gave them that flexibility, whereas the restrictions or the restrictions on periodic tenancies meant that they would naturally roll over to a fixed term tenancy, would naturally roll over to a periodic tenancy. Whereas now I think there's more ability to actually have a fixed term tenancy and an end for the sum of, say, if you use your own house yourself.
That's absolutely right. So we've explicitly noted those changes as something that we want to explore. So there's also going to be a qualitative aspect to this report that we're looking for, and that's going to tease into the intentions for would-be landlords and understand what the barriers are. And anecdotally, we've also heard about that being a limitation, and that we know flexibility is really important for a lot of property owners. So that will be something that we're explicitly asking about as well.
Very good. Thank you.
We touch base with the Far North District Council, and they've undertaken a really similar study. So it's really just building on the work that they've completed.
Right. Far North, did you say?
It's one of them. Is it the Far North or?
I think so. The report's going to be available in February, so we haven't seen it yet.
Oh, right.
But we're looking forward to that.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you. Thanks.
My question is more at the higher level, the cost benefit of all this. And then, like you say, you've done a report up north, you're doing another study now. Have we got any other sort of vision of where this is leading? It's all very well doing studies and understanding things, but we talk about it. But how are you going to, what have we got any sort of policy or enforcement type action in mind that will, with the study information, will suddenly say, okay, we're going to double rate people who have got vacant sections, or what we're going to do? I don't know. Where are we heading with this?
I think that's a really excellent question. I think the key motivation for us is about the previous work that's been done through the district plan, both with the short-term living changes and then more recently with the inclusionary housing variation that was withdrawn. The data and understanding of the short-term letting market was explicitly noted in that recommendation as being one of the key reasons why it shouldn't go ahead, because we didn't have the information that we needed. So the key point is to get the information that we need to know what the appropriate response is to go forward, whether that's going to be within the short-term letting sort of regulatory space, or whether it's saying, no, actually, if we regulate short-term letting further, it's not going to have the consequences that we're looking for, the outcomes that we want. So actually, perhaps it is more appropriate to go back to something like that, including housing variation.
Okay, thank you. That's good. Yeah, any other parts of the item? I just had a couple of things to talk about. These deeds you've got with developers. I know those are 3 parks, one there. Just trying to understand a little bit more. I know I've never seen the detail of the deed and what they've actually signed up to, but if they're doing, I know they say they're doing other things, like I saw drawings the other day for 3 parks for 3-level workers accommodation. If they're doing that, you take that into account, does that have that waive any requirement under the deed to give up land or anything, or?
Yeah, so moving on to the second main part of this report with the deeds. So the 3 parks deeds, there's 2 deeds there that we're really interested in. The Valentine Investment is sort of the northwest area, and then you've got the 3 parks, mostly commercial area. So with those together, because they are the same developer, there are outstanding contributions for community houses to the trust, but also affordable houses. There's various eligibility criteria about what that looks like. So we, as you noted, there's some upcoming plans for residential work there, but actually to this date, it's mostly been commercial development. And so practically speaking, there's not much that we can do right now to try and enforce the compliance with that deed, because there aren't residential developments there to be used.
Yeah.
So we're in discussions with the developer about that. And to try and say, okay, well, at the moment we have got these outstanding contributions. They have been triggered by our calculations. But we work from here practically to say, let's get similar or better outcomes for the community, whether that's through the community housing contributions or affordable housing contributions, but practically in a way that will be possible from this point on with the plans that are going ahead. So with that residential development, we're in discussions with the developer about whether some or all of those could meet either of the community housing or the affordable housing requirements. The deed is also, it's reasonably dated. I think it was from 2009. So at that time, there was slightly different expectations from both the Community Housing Trust and Council about what would be appropriate. So we're talking about other ways that might be able to vary the deed that works better for both parties. For example, having a bigger lot for the housing trust where we can anticipate higher density housing than we did at the time. That might work better for both parties. Acknowledging, of course, that none of this has yet been tested with the council, and so any variations will have to come to full council as well.
Thank you for that. Welcome, Quentin. Just by information, we changed the order agenda because we couldn't do one until staff turned up, but we're on item 3 at the moment. Okay, just finishing item 3.
Thank you. Apologies.
You
for
missed
being
item
late.
2, but we're all.
For the record, I did leave home over 2 hours ago.
Oh, gosh.
I've just arrived.
So yeah, we're on the housing action plan update. So just had some questions on the studies and where it's heading. Just talking then a bit about the deeds for developers providing contributions, and just looking at the A3 page there, it's a pretty good summary. Yeah, so Gavin, you have a question.
So paragraph 8 talks about that the long view price for the house and land package with the proposal to go to construction inflation only. So it seems that they haven't agreed with that. So there's obviously ongoing discussions about.
Yeah, just on that, I didn't say whether there's a mediation. I'm happy to answer the question, but just whether it's appropriate in public, some of the information you may have on that, but that's up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately, there's not much that we can provide in public or excluded at this stage. So we have initiated the dispute resolution process as the deed set out. So we're going through that process now to organise mediation, and there's no further updates I can provide at this time.
Okay. Matt.
That's a slightly random question, but related to developers. There was some interest from sort of long-term investment companies looking at this district to build affordable housing with an integrated construction building model. Has there been any further interest, or has that sort of gone quiet?
I don't think there's anything I'm aware of in particular that I can update on.
What was the name of it, Matt?
Simplicity.
Simplicity.
We had discussions with Simplicity. What we've been trying to, and they advised of the barriers to build in our district. So we're really keen to work with those companies to really look at each stage and unpick those barriers and the role each party plays. What their advice to us was the cost per square metre. So it was the land cost, the lack of availability of the market to build those the developments here. So there was the whole system, barriers.
The fundamental barriers.
I'm just Chair,
developers coming quite frequently, talking about the type of simplicity, housing and affordable housing, so we're working with those parties all the time.
Okay, thanks. Melissa?
Just looking, I think, at the A3, that housing challenge, how much of, I guess there's a few things and what else could do to help? Like how much of this is kind of being fed into, or can we get into, obviously, the regional deal, which is, I guess, where we're hoping some of these triggers. So for example, is there any chance of getting that accommodation supplement information in there? The same with the I know you talked about the data for the short-term rental, but what about the new legislation, like controlling that, or does that depend on the study? Like, yeah, sorry, this seems like a bit of a circular, like, where do you start to get it in to actually make some progress? And there's quite a few little bits in there, obviously. This work is informing the regional deal, and it is, you'll see, you know, sharing that value of growth is a really big part of the proposed regional deal, and it's looking at the lessons we've learned, you know, maybe looking at what we achieved through the HESHA with the housing and special housing areas, and that perpetual supply of affordable housing to the trust, and so building on that type of work. Yeah, about the accommodation supplement.
The accommodation supplement, I don't think is on there at the moment, but we'll look into that. That's
Okay.
a really great idea.
Yeah, because I just think that's something that, yeah, to me seems quite like a simple thing that could make a really big difference to a number, you know, to people who are really struggling. The next part of that is, and I don't know if it's this point, but something I've been trying to get my head around, and I feel like it is part of this, but going into regional deals as well, is that the problem is getting worse and not better. You know, even though all of the good work that's being done to help affordable housing, the problem is actually getting worse, and I don't see any short-term solution. And we keep talking about the inclusionary zoning at a rate of 5%, but has anyone looked at what, because as it gets more and more unaffordable for people, everyday people, to buy a house, what is the actual proportion, not the 5% that we've kind of been living with, but what's the portion of houses, affordable houses, that we actually need in the district to kind of make life? Is that been looked at? Like, yeah, so with the 2021 housing and business capacity assessment, what it showed is we had a long-term shortfall of around 6,900 houses, of affordable houses. And what was that as a percentage? So I think it was, so I think we had a demand for about 20,000. So it was, you know, just under a third. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, demand, and so with our affordable inclusionary, I think we were saying about 1,000 houses over, you know, so that it is a, you know, it's part of a package of works we need to do. So what we've always said is inclusionary housing or value capture for affordable housing is part of a package of works what we need to, you know, do. So looking at housing choice, different zonings, you know, we do enable residential flats quite readily, which is really in line with what the government changes are bringing through now. So there's a package of things that we need to work with. Yeah,
Including things like build to rent schemes, disincentivization of land banking. So these are some of the mechanisms that we're trying to work through with the regional deal offering, and obviously painting them and building the economic story around that as much as the social outcome story.
Well, thank you.
Okay, just the last one for me on the thing. I talked about supporting community housing providers, and I was going to raise it in item 1 anyway. Just to understand, is there any update on where we're getting with the property team and the review of our land? Because there's been a review of all our land, and because we've got people bidding, wanting, you know, Abbeyfield wanting a bit of land, and these are actually community housing providers. So I just wondering, have you got an update, or should I be waiting for item 1 about where that land reviews at?
So my understanding is that they're still working through legal technicalities about specific pieces of land, about the possible ways of disposing them and what's required and that sort of thing.
Okay.
I don't have any update on timeframes.
You haven't got any timeline?
But we're working really closely with them to make sure that one of the options is considering those alternative uses such as housing.
Okay. Cool. All right, any other questions? Anything, Quinn? Oh, sorry. You're right.
Notes here, so I mean, that A3 sheet is really interesting in it. There's a whole lot of useful information there. One is that this district has the highest number of dwelling building consents per 1,000 residents of anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
So we're building lots of houses. It's just what they're being used for, whether they're holiday homes or the short-term visitor accommodation, rather than being available for people to live in. The other one is the housing affordability, and the comparison for how this district compares to the rest of New Zealand is considerably less affordable here. And also the population growth, where our population growth in this district is so much higher than the average across New Zealand. So it's a whole lot of things all combining to make it quite challenging. And you know, I've also said before that our affordable housing, that term, if the housing is for sale, it's affordable usually only for the first person that buys it, and then it goes on the market at some point, and it's at market rates. It's no longer that as affordable, but certainly, you know, schemes like build to rent, where they are held by a long-term landlord, is you know, has some merit, I think, in terms of making places affordable for people to live in.
It's a very good point, Gavin. Yeah, that's where we often, the work with Housing Trust creates that more perpetual flow of affordability. And I just wanted to drop into the conversation as well. When we've been looking at the regional deal packages, we've been thinking in terms of affordable living as broadly as just the housing component, which is where the energy supply and access to solar and things like that all come into that bigger package, and how much it costs to meet.
Yeah, right.
It's important to note that the affordability component doesn't just relate to the ability to buy, though. It also relates to the affordability of rent, and it's housing affordability, not just house affordability.
So let's get back to that living affordability rather than.
But, you know, just to reinforce that point, that, you know, 6,500 shortfall, no amount of supply is going to make those houses more affordable. Even if there's supply, they're not going to be affordable. So, you know, that's where the alternative mechanisms are really important.
Okay, anything else? Right, item 3, the resolution is note the contents of the report. I'll move that. Someone seconded. Matt seconded. All in favour? Thank you very much, Jane. Thanks.
Thank you.
So are we right to go on one or not? Oh, we are.
We're on one now.
Can we go back to item 1? Bear with us a minute. I'm going to find.
Thank you. We will take the item.
Hang on.
I'll read. Oh, sorry. And also, this is Gabby's last planning and strategy meeting for a year, so she's off on parental leave as of tomorrow. So
Right.
I'd like to thank you for all her hard work on
Well, thank you.
spatial planning and the
Thanks.
Papawa.
So I'll expect a really good download. Okay, so we're talking update on Southern Corridor and structure plan. QLDC. Anything what I had, noting the report, yeah, things happen, are moving on. Is there anything sort of hot jumps out at you that you really want to update us on that has changed?
So just noting that the report is obviously dated from the 11th of November, so there will be projects that are slightly out of date. But of note, as obviously the arterial stage 1 has been completed.
Well,
Open. So that is, I guess, one to note. In terms of the comprehensive parking management plans, I believe it's still at AMA, but I do think that there will be an update coming to the infrastructure committee around parking strategies. So that may shift. And in regard to active travel route A7, I understand that the Trails Trust is in discussions with landowners and NZTA around that, and a further update can be provided once they've provided us with further information around that.
Well, that was A7.
A7, yeah. And then finally, OIC have advised me that since the report was written, that the funding for the Wanaka public transport business case funding is no longer available.
We don't want to hear that.
Nor is it within the scope of the government's GPS, so it's sort of a double-headed ribbon. It was killed by the GPS and by the availability of funding, so.
Okay, so that all, we want to just take questions? I don't know, the update, a little bit of an update on the Wanaka Network Optimization Single Stage Business Case for Transport. Tony Pickard's trying to close that off with the consultant, and we've been working with them to just get a finalised, based on all the data we've got, finalised a sort of a network plan for that area, so we can start prioritising and putting work into future plans. That's correct, isn't it, Tim?
Largely, yeah.
All right, any questions? Gavin,
Yeah, just a bit too right. Paragraph 18, I'll put a note.
18.
Where is it?
Three waters
Three
infrastructure.
words infrastructure. So Southern Corridor, obviously there's work going on. Currently at the long list solution phase, and the short list being developed in January. So I don't know where that's, any update on where that's got to now. I guess my question is, there's been, in terms of Three Waters, obviously a lot of government policy actually coming out and changing, evolving. And whether there's a feeling that some of that may affect what the options are for Southern Corridor and Three Waters, particularly I guess with wastewater treatment. Or is that perhaps outside the realm of what this report can?
Yeah, so the long list is considering all the options, and so that's the purpose of that shortlisting. And our intention is we will have to be live to government changes, but what we're looking at is what is the best solution for the entire Southern Corridor, and that remains our priority.
Yeah.
We will be workshopping it with the landowners and developers and moving through the process. You'll see quite a lot of movement with the structure plan from this moment on, particularly once we get the natural hazards and the infrastructure solutions more down to that short list.
Right, okay. Yeah, so yeah, probably my question really is with that short list, is the potential that the short list may change depending on what government policy statements might allow? Some things that might not be able to be included on a shortlist at the moment may become viable for a shortlist in the future, potentially.
I'm not too sure. I think from my understanding of the long list, I don't think it would change. I think because we are considering all the options, I don't think that comes in. We're also just Kaitahu are feeding into that too, so we're waiting for their assessment, and that will inform it.
Yep.
But you're right, we do have to be live to those. But what we're just wanting is the best outcome for that community and the broader community at the same time.
Okay. And you're just picking up on the point you made about the A7 active travel route from Jack's Point to Frankton. It's you know, I know the Trails Trust are considering that. Nothing's confirmed, I don't think, at this stage, but they are doing a lot of work towards it. So hopefully the next report might be able to say that rather than just there's no funding and no avenue for achieving it, that there has been an alternative route and alternative funding, and perhaps look like happening sometime soon. Thank you.
Yeah, before we go to the next group, just want to go back to the Three Waters thing. I was going to raise it, I will raise it at the infrastructure committee, but I'm just wondering if there's been any muttering on the engineering side of it, whether there's a change in sort of view based on the pressures we've got on some of our plants like Shotover, of having more standalone plants rather than trying to bring them together. We had this big discussion about hardware versus Wanaka and things like that. I just wondered, have you in your area had anything from engineers sort of suggesting there's a change in sort of view on that?
I think there has been more openness to consider potentially a distributed options. But as we're working through the shortlist, so all the options are on the table.
Right.
We can actually, once we do get that shortlist, we can do a detailed workshop with councillors, and we can go through that if that's helpful.
Yeah, most probably will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Matt.
Oh, thank you. I'll start with no, I won't. It's a comment. No, I'll do that. I've got to ask a question. Well, okay, my comment is going to be, there's a statement here, continues to be a risk associated with time and cost with Territorial 1, and I keep seeing that repeated over and over again. It just worries me, so that's my comment. Secondly, though, here's my question, just in relation to the parking management plan, the transport engineers, that position's been vacant for probably about 6 months or so now. Is it currently being advertised, or do you know where it's at and how much impact does it have on progressing some of this work?
I believe potentially Tony is, the transport team will be, going to re-advertise. And I imagine it must be having an impact on the.
So it hasn't been advertised yet?
Well, it was advertised and
Oh, it
was
was.
unfilled, so I understand, that I think they are looking to re-advertise that position.
Right.
My understanding though is that there's still progressing through with those parking, we've got to sign up the strategy of the infrastructure committee, and then individual parking management plans will then follow through after that. So they are still working.
So it's still picking up some of that workload.
Yeah.
Second question around point 13, natural hazards. Just wondering if you could just give me a bit of an explanation on that, because I would have thought some of that would have been covered off in the consent work earlier on by the developers, but obviously is that being missed or?
I think because of the length of time that's passed since the original zoning, some of the work that was undertaken for the original Jack's Point zone is no longer up to the existing the standards of today.
Okay.
So we are looking at only the greenfield areas and just sort of plugging in the gaps. So because of the changes and what we're seeing from government is those changes in the natural hazard space are going to continue. We are going to see a lot more stringency in that space. So what we're just making sure that what we're doing down there, we're ticking all the boxes. So for Ellie and her team and then the consenting team, we have that information. So what I can gather is a lot of the information that we would lead to the resource consent phase, we are needing a bit more upfront in the structure plan and plan change phase. And we're also working quite closely with the Otago Regional Council. We put in a bid to hopefully get some money as part of their annual plan to help contribute toward this work, but we're getting an update from them later today.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Melissa?
I don't know if this is really the right place, but it's kind of in the joint work program and it seems completely relevant.
It's everything.
Well, I think this is where I'm like, is this still planning a strategy or is this moving into infrastructure? So we're talking Ladies Mile is already signed off. It's got to go, but there are lots of conditions about infrastructure being done first. But I guess given today seemed to be the worst that we've had in that area. Lots of people in this room know that acutely because they came and it took them an hour and a half to do an 18-minute drive. So I guess what reassurance can we give people that there is provision in there to, I don't know if fix, but alleviate some of it, because I don't know if it's ever going to be fixed. But what we can do going forward, especially given that there, and I know that they're not on the table yet, but there are a couple of big fast track projects that would have huge impact on that stretch of road because they're all feeder roads into that. So again, I don't know if this is the right place to ask this question. If it's not, please let me know the right place to ask it.
No, I think there are. It is. This is the crossover, but I mean, we're doing everything. We're doing everything we can in our realm, looking at making sure these places and alleys with Te Pitahi, making sure it is self-contained as much as we can, trying to encourage that that change, that use of the bus transportation. But even though throughout all the public, all our business cases that are coming through the infrastructure team, it's showing that even with all this stuff, we are going to have a problem.
Yeah.
So that really shows interconnectivity with our proposed regional deal and saying, we actually do need some sort of offline system, whether a gondola or whoosh, to fix our traffic incidents.
An offline.
Yeah.
And look, I think it's a really fair thing to highlight because, as we highlighted in the Southern Corridor update, that the levels of service we're heading to for transport particularly are incredibly low, and we don't have an answer to those. Yes, we're investigating wastewater options, but we've got no wastewater investment until year 8 or something, I think, in the Southern Corridor. But the RAG status is still green. These are, I won't harp on about but have we investigated how to more clearly reflect the level of urgency and importance regarding the issues that they relate to? Yes, the spatial structure plan's going fine, but the issue that it highlights, the fact that we've got a massive infrastructure deficit in the Southern Corridor and in other places, is flashing red, you know. So, you know, these are I think, yeah, how do we indicate, you know, the level of risk or the level of urgency relating to some of these issues, you know?
So I think it's a good point, Quentin, and you
I've
raise
raised
it
it
regularly. I think potentially we need to think about the limitations of the rank status, because this has been refined, it has been tuned, it has been brought into being consistent with how RAG status is used across the organisation. Been a lot of work on that, and ultimately, you know, it's green because it is achieving the agreed milestones according to the current programme that's been signed off.
Maybe I could ask this question in a different way though.
The thing is, there's something else we could do.
Well, I suppose is how do we highlight the level of risk and urgency on something like the Southern Corridor relating to, you know, the risks associated with infrastructure deficit?
So I think risk is in there. I guess it's what that project is actually kind of speaking to in terms of bigger picture strategic risk, isn't it? So maybe we'll take that away as a think about and see if we can come up
Like
with
if we take the
take
the spatial plan, for instance, or, you know, the spatial plan and go, where are the really high risk outcomes here for us? You know, look, the Howea conveyancing scheme, you know, is in play. You know, we might be constructing it this year, it might be delivered in 3 years' time. If it's not, that's a really big problem. If the Albert Town Bridge doesn't have a replacement, you know, yes, it's sort of working at the moment, but we know that the projection is in a couple of years' time, it's going to result in seriously bad levels of service. That's a risk that should be pinging and going, this is a key network risk for us in transport. So I suppose you break it down into the different infrastructure issues and then go, well, you know, it might be that there's not going to be enough schooling in Howea, for instance,
and that's exactly what we're doing through that structure planning process.
Yeah.
And a big part we're looking at is once we have worked through that short list of infrastructure solutions, how are we actually going to fund this? As you say, it's not to year 8. So the way that we have funded and we've delivered infrastructure isn't working for us, and maybe things we have to work with developers to get more upfront contributions, potentially working with the developers to they deliver. We're part of the process, looking at all these different tools, different financing tools such as the IFF Infrastructure and Financing Act. You know, I think that's all going to come into play.
But the point being that if that doesn't eventuate, we have a major risk in the Southern Corridor that we can't provide the levels of housing that either the government or, you know, are expected of us. We can't deliver, you know, the outcomes that are needed, and so that, you know, look, I know we're working on all these things, but we've got to flag the risk somehow. We've got to identify these things and make it really clear that if these things, you know, don't occur, we're in trouble.
Alison?
Through the chair, agree entirely with what you're saying. I think paragraphs 9 and 10 of the report we got in front of us sort of summarise where we are with the structure plan process, adding to what Natalie said. It is all about the timings, the dependencies, what sort of infrastructure investment we will need if it's entirely within that zone, if it's depending on other community infrastructure that we've already got. That is the point, I guess, of the structure planning process, to lay that all out, and then in terms of the district plan and plan changes, to use that, might have timings within them, such as what we've done with Howea, that a lot of that new development can't happen until there is a link through to Project Pure. The zoning is sitting there, it's enabled, but it can't be enacted. So there's tools that we can use, and we'll continue to try and facilitate the use of those through a structure planning process.
But equally being clear that, and that's a good example, that is a constraint on development at this point in time. We cannot do more development at Howea until that pipeline is complete.
It's acknowledged within the district plan in terms of a rule that you cannot get consent for until that pipeline is available within that new land.
Okay, thanks, Michelle.
I was just saying, it's coming out of the detail for a moment. I think possibly what you're speaking to is a need for us to report on outcome risk. So what is the risk of the
I
outcome?
agree, yeah.
Because it's all going to go to connected. I'll take that away and give that some thought.
Yeah, and I accept that it may be different to the RAG status,
yeah,
but
different.
you know, as I said, I've asked a different way that we just need to be able to highlight the level of risk.
Sorry, through the chair, just note that this was written back in November. Subsequently, we've had the council have their own monitoring reports, and this project has actually been recorded as Amber through that. So that was actually updated in December, January for that. And the reason it was updated as Amber for those ones is because of the infrastructure delays because we were waiting to go through the shortlist process with the infrastructure.
Where was that, sorry?
So that's for the council-wide monitoring
Oh, yeah,
report.
okay, yeah.
This is a project within that we also report on, but that's done monthly, so it's a little bit more up to date.
I'll just highlight one other example that I think is within the RAG status is say the public transport business case, for instance, and while that transport case is, you know, it has worked its way through, we've now had policy changes that put the whole thing at risk, you know, regarding the fare box recovery policy change, for instance. And that sort of thing, I think, needs to be is probably appropriate to highlight in the RAG status and change properly the level that it good flags.
Any other?
Just one, hopefully quick one, the joint work plan, for developing and implementing tourism travel demand strategy, which hasn't started yet, and there's a lot of collaboration needed with a lot of organisations. Is that likely to start in the next 12 months?
Sorry, which priority initiatives?
It's number 13.
On the table?
On the table, sorry. Under the joint work plan. Page
26.
18 or 26?
Well, both 18, 26.
I think we have to get an update from the transport team on
Yeah.
timing of that.
That would be quite useful because I think it's a critical piece of work that we sort of need to have an understanding of when it might actually start.
So just quickly flicking through the table, just under the item 2 there, it says for the ladies' mile, waiting decision from the Minister of Environment for ladies. Look, we've all done that. Is that out of date?
Yes, that has all happened. The issue that Gabby just illustrated before is these reports are written.
That's right. I just want to make sure I hadn't missed something.
It's done. Those provisions are actually formally operative in the district plan. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Another editorial, number 4 on the table, investigate the use of alternative funding, financing tools. Detailed design report for the Upper Clutha wastewater conveyance scheme. Project to be tendered early 2024. I think it's 25, is it? Sorry, it's just an editorial. Making sure it hadn't been good if it hadn't been tendered 24.
It might have been tendered 24, but the tenders haven't been.
I can check.
Oh,
I
was
can
it?
check.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It might have been.
Oh, yeah,
last
okay.
year.
Okay, not a biggie. I mentioned earlier about I know item 5 there about the property reviews, so we've addressed that. Any other points on the table?
Yeah, I'll go quick on that. Number 16, where it does talk about public transport. As Quentin mentioned, some things are possibly going to be difficult to achieve under the current state of policies, but one in there does have some delivery mid-2025. Obviously, it's covered by ORC anyway, but they've got the Arrowtown to Queenstown route by Mulligan's Road, and I know we have our passenger advisory group meetings with them, trying to ensure that route, if it does happen, is a circular route rather than a there and back each way. Just it provides a much better passenger service if you can go past that midpoint and carry on your route if you're safely going from Arthur's Point to Frankton as you can now, rather than having to go to Queenstown and then change to another bus to go the other west. That's a discussion we have to have with ORC on that, if they can actually implement it and how they do it.
Down on paragraph 11 of the table, sustainable tourism system. Just noting that you talk about Electrify Queenstown events scheduled for 2025, just highlighting we've got a Electrify Wanaka group now too. So you got Electrify Queenstown, but Electrify Wanaka has now started up. Okay,
I think that's been announced since this was.
yeah, just keeping you informed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's down 16. I don't know, obviously, the Lakes, Three Lakes Cultural Trust, the Lakes District Museum money, just understanding, making sure, I don't know whether we keep getting updates on how that money's been spent, how well it's going. Does that come through in a separate, under the creative and cultural strategy updates, is it?
Yeah, that would be something that team will bring forward to the table.
Right, any other questions? Thank you for once again your comprehensive report. All the best for your upcoming experience. I should ask, is that a new experience? Someone move that we note the contents of this report before you all run away. Matt moves, Gavin seconds. Any other comment? Thank you very much, Rob. All in favour? Aye. Thank you. Bye-bye. So where are we at now? Four.
Yeah.
Proposed district plan updates and other key updates. Alison.
Thank you. Good morning. Still morning. Good morning, committee. I will just take you through this page by page, and if there's any questions arising from any of the projects which are in bold, which are changes since the last past agenda item, and also any changes since I wrote this agenda item, which was last year. Going down to, these were just working through different stages of the plan and what is still outstanding. Going down to page 121, we've been working with the Environment Court in terms of a hearing date for the Artist Point re-notification. So yeah, and looking at May or June of this year for that. And there is a agenda item, a late agenda item. Thank you for consideration later in this meeting in terms of ensuring that we've got the correct allegations for that. Working down in terms of the priority landscape variations and working through those appeals. I think we had 16 with one late appeal, 17 appeals. We've got proposed resolution of 2 of those. The consent documentation memorandum are sitting with the Environment Court at the moment. So that is good. We've been working with the parties in terms of case management, how we should deal with those appeals, the order in which we should deal with them, and how long we'll need for mediation. And we're looking at about 8 days of Environment Court mediation from about the 8th of May this year. So that is in train, and we've got those existing delegations that we received from the committee last year. In terms of the urban intensification variation, as you're aware, we had a change in terms of commissioners, and we've now got David Allen, who will be chairing this variation. We're working really hard on that with a with an intention of having that variation heard prior to the local body elections this year. So we will be, well, the chair and the commissioners on that will be working to get a minute out to that effect as soon as we can to all of the submitters. Yeah, as you've been aware, that's been held out for a number of reasons, including wanting to ensure that we take into account the housing and business analysis. Dropping down to the Upper Clutha landscapes, we have received around 50 submissions for that process. we're working to summarise the decisions requested within those and looking for that to happen probably next month or late this month. So we're well on the way on that one. And commissioners have been important and are ready to go in respect of that as well.
Can you confirm most likely hearing dates for those? For me?
Yes, I'd hope we have that, but yeah, we'll do that. Yep.
Locked it out yet, but I'm sure it's, I mean, it's fine, but it's just not in the.
That same panel that did the previous?
Not quite, we, Jane.
Oh, Jane is not, okay, yeah.
And Richard's replaced him.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, no, I will confirm that for you. That's fine. What's in terms of my scrolling?
Special zones?
Yeah, down to special zones, top of page, bottom of page 1, 2, 3. Nearly all of the monitoring reports have been completed, and as they're being reviewed, they're being put up on the council's website. So there is a website page here that's dedicated to the work that's happening in the space. So I encourage councillors to have a look at that. It includes the story map consultation tool, which was presented to you late last year at a councillor workshop. And as work progresses in terms of the options analysis for all of those special zones, we will be coming back to the council in terms of workshops to your assistance in that manner. Nothing much happening on those. Private plan change for the hills, which is being processed at the moment. We've asked for further information, and once that comes in, we'll be able to present that a report back to this committee in terms of their decision making, accept, reject, adopt, as in line with what's required in the Act. Dropping down to page 126, making the plan operative. That's a bit on me in terms of getting that project moving, which I hope to in the next month, and put some time aside for that. As I noted in the last agenda item, the latest model provisions have been made formally operative, and they are shown and marked in a little sort of gabble within the E-plan. That was a requirement of the consent notice as part of the streamlined planning process, that we had to make those provisions like formally operative within a certain time frame. So that's been done. What I'm working on for the rest of the plan is a number of full chapters will be made operative, which is really exciting. But the heart of it is ensuring that we've got the right provisions that are marked as operative or not as we go through, but that will happen as soon as we can. Gabby and Anita highlighted that we've received the latest infrastructure modelling and updated demand projections, which we're waiting on to progress the housing business analysis. So we're pushing really hard on those consultants to get us that as soon as we can, now that we've got the information, and yet we've got further meetings on that happening at the moment. Council is still involved with the proposed Otago regional policy statement in terms of attending and participating in mediation for a number of the chapters there. I was in Dunedin last week for that in terms of energy, infrastructure, transport. So it is happening. I'm happy to take any other questions that you may have. The next few pages just highlight those chapters that don't have any outstanding appeals, sort of where we are on some of those other appeals, what is happening in terms of timing of those.
Okay. You're waiting for a few, the Tussock Rise.
Yeah. So that hearing happened at the end of last year.
Sure,
So yeah.
How did that go? No, but
Sorry?
might not be appropriate time. We talked about that.
Yeah, in terms of the timing for that, I can say the hearing was held last year. Our closing submissions were due on Friday, and the appellants have 2 weeks to lodge them, and then soon after that, hopefully we'll get a decision from the court.
What's that one? Sorry?
That was Tussock Rise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Quick question on
Melissa.
urban intensification.
Yeah.
so the hearing set for August. Is
They'll
it-
start, this stage, they're starting 28th of July,
Oh, yeah.
and there'll be, 3 weeks.
That hasn't been confirmed.
Oh, it's not
public.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine, that's all right, that's what we're working on.
That's the current goal.
As hard as we can, yeah.
And
Take
so I
note.
kind of missed it, because wasn't there a 2-year time frame? Like,
Yes,
so
there
what,
is, yeah.
so which we will have then passed?
Yes,
So
correct.
what happens?
We note that we didn't meet that timeframe, and which is unfortunate, but we sort of.
I mean, it's quite good reason.
Oh,
I
no,
mean,
there's
no,
lots of really good reasons to
Yeah.
get a better outcome, considering the investment made by council and the community in the submission process to ensure that all the right information is on the table.
Yeah, no, I just wondered if there was any either repercussions or we can.
We just
Just
note that, and we note it also in our, every year or 6 months, we quarterly, sorry, provide to, MFE where we are with all of our stats, both
Okay.
for, resources and timing of, plan changes.
Yeah, all right.
And private plan changes. And all
Okay,
that.
so that doesn't affect it at all, apart from just kind of,
No,
I guess,
it
keeping
happens.
people up to date.
Yeah.
Sure.
And there's,
We don't anticipate being an issue, we'll try our very best.
Yeah.
And it will be the first to your mark with this lecture.
Yeah,
yes,
I mean,
Yeah.
to me,
So,
it seems
so there's
like-
nothing that will say, if you miss this, it's.
Yeah, okay.
exactly.
And I guess then if that happens in August, then it wouldn't come back to council till the end of the year. I mean, definitely it will be the next council that it
It
comes
will
back
be
to.
at the next council.
Yeah.
Yes, in terms of timing to make that decision, but,
Yeah, no, so
Right.
that's kind of what I assumed, but
Yeah,
just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that there was.
Good point,
Yeah.
thanks, Melissa.
yes.
Any other comment or questions on the report update? The resolution, note the contents of this report, note the updates on timing and progress on projects undertaken by the policy planning team. I'll move that. Gavin moved it. Melissa second. Any further discussion? All in favour?
Right.
Thanks, Alison. Now, I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the remainder of the items. Someone second that? No. Gavin second, all in favour?
No.
Oh, Gary, okay, we'll have a couple of minutes.